Okay, I'm ready to introduce Terry Lodge. Terry is a longtime environmental and civil rights lawyer in Toledo. And over his 44-year legal career, has represented protesters opposing nuclear power and nuclear weapons. Some protesters also opposing mountaintop removal, coal mining, fracking, and its radioactive waste, and as well as war. He values free speech, freedom of association, and the protest rights of activists above every other constitutional right. He worries about the privatized censorship of dissent on corporate social media and the money equals megaphone problem that was given to the corporations in the Citizens United Supreme Court decision of 2010 that declared corporations to be people. Terry currently represents scores of activists opposing Nuclear Regulatory Commission's licensing of proposed nuclear spent that's used nuclear fuel dumps from across the country. Those would be going to Texas and New Mexico. He has legally questioned the nuclear weapons implications of Centrus manufacturing high assay low enriched uranium, otherwise known as HALEU, at the Department of Energy site here in Piketon. He's part of a working group to keep corroded and dangerous Palisades nuclear plant, keep this Palisades nuclear plant on Lake Michigan permanently shut down, despite attempts at a corporate bailout of the already closed reactor. He also works with the Irwin Citizens Awareness Network in Tennessee, opposing a new high-enriched uranium purification line at Nuclear Fuel Services. That's the name of the company, Nuclear Fuel Services. And this would threaten both public and worker health with additional radiation. Currently, he has appealed to the Nuclear Regulatory Commission to deny the license based on potential groundwater contamination and also the worker contamination and also nuclear weapons proliferation. So we'd like to welcome, oh wait, I have to say, Terry gets his kicks driving his ancient pickup truck in holiday parades, draped with banners announcing that nuclear weapons violate international law. So we're proud to have Terry here today.
Could I have a little bit of overhead light as opposed, well, the overhead light to sort of compensate for the searchlight? No. Yeah, that ancient pickup truck broke down yesterday en route to Piketon from Northwest Ohio. Sometimes ancient isn't so good. So you've heard two very serious scientists talking about what's happening regionally around Piketon and in southeastern Ohio. I've been litigating and crusading against commercial nuclear power and weapons for more time than I care to think about, but since the late 1970s. And it's kind of interesting to think about. The early themes that they called us tree huggers for verbalizing were radiation is forever and we all live downwind. And the problem that distinguishes what's going on here from a nasty factory that's pouring PCBs into the river is radiation is, for all intents and purposes, forever. You think about the half-lives of hundreds, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of years. We're talking about any new activity in the nuclear enrichment or processing arena being layered on top of 70 years of history at Piketon. It isn't going away. It's hardly diminishing during that 70 years. And in fact, it's spreading. It's spreading by water, by air, by the food chain, by the forest chain, by animals. I may not look like I'm older than 30, but the fact is that I grew up in Madison, Indiana. I was born in 1950. And when I was about 4, I remember the construction of this gigantic coal-fired power plant, 3 760-foot stacks in the hill country of southern Indiana. And within a year after it opened, approximately 1955, I became a terrifically asthmatic child. And in an era when asthma was not very well diagnosed and certainly not very well treated. And for years after that, I was on medications and all of that. When I finally moved away as an adult, the asthma largely has vanished. But I remember asking my mother when I was approximately 5, what are all those towers going across the Ohio River? Madison, incidentally, is a beautiful historic town right on the Ohio River, 65 miles downriver from Cincy. It's about 150 miles from here. And I've never been to Piketon, but I remember asking my mother, what are the electric lines? What is all that for? And she said, it's all the electricity is going to a place in Ohio. And I don't know much more than that. So 20 or so years later, when in the mid 70s, I began in grad school and law school in Toledo. I learned about the Davis-Besse nuclear power plant, and I came across the mention of the Portsmouth gaseous diffusion plant in Piketon, and finally made the connection. The Kiger Creek plant in Ohio and Clifty Creek plant in Madison, Indiana, were generating 100% of their power, 2,000 megawatts, to enrich uranium for the nuclear power industry and for various and sundry errands, I believe, that the Atomic Energy Commission and the DOE put them onto. It's just sort of an interesting connection, and I'm happy to finally be in Piketon and talking about this. But I want to talk about the future. So you've heard what the legacy is so far, what activities running back 70 years mean for the fact of all of us and all of you who live downwind. The American centrifuge plant, the Centris plant here, is the only licensed facility in the country for production of HALEU, high-assay low-enriched uranium. It's about just shy of 20% enriched uranium. This is meant for the next generation of nuclear reactors. They're called advanced reactors or small modular reactors. Some people call them small mythical reactors because none of them are off the drawing boards, and they're going to cost enormously more than the happy news talk that we all get. There's a big push on for SMRs, small modular reactors, and Centris is supposedly making the fuel for that next generation. They are concentrating it about 4 to 5 times more intensely than traditional current fission reactors, Davis-Besse and Perry and others. So you're talking about, of course, more compressed in a laws of physics and chemistry sort of way, high energy fuel. It is also at 20%. Most nuclear weapons experts consider that you're at the threshold of entering into the usable, saleable, trafficable, illegally trafficable nuclear weapons arena globally. You're also talking about at the Centris plant, it is established that they will be enriching at times and not exactly deliberately above a 20% level up into the 25 percentile. So it begins to get richer and richer. For comparison, today's nuclear weapons are, they contain highly enriched uranium at about a 90% enriched rate. But according to the physicists I've talked to, the energy necessary to enrich from 20% to 90% is less than it takes to get from, I think Dr. Ketterer said 0.7 to 20%. So we're talking about an increasingly desirable material to be stolen and sold. There's a lot of pride right now. There's a new plant being built, a factory in Oak Ridge called the TRISO, TRISO facility that's going to be making so-called nuclear pebbles. There'll be pebbles, pebble-shaped, ball-shaped pebbles of nuclear fuel that will probably emanate from here, probably be made at Centrist. And the enrichment of uranium isn't going to stop there so far as things at Piketon are concerned. There's talk by the Southern Ohio Diversification Initiative that the land next to the Centrist plant would be used for another fuel fabrication facility. That means you're going to have a lot of mechanized handling and grinding and chemical processes that will be used to further combine fuel into usable form. So you're talking again about handling things that will cause emissions, water, air, expose workers, that sort of thing. Ports is slated, thanks to a new development in the Ohio General Assembly, to have its own small modular reactors in the next few years. The Ohio General Assembly is about to pass a new law to create the Ohio Nuclear Development Authority, which, by all reckoning, is looking like it's going to be an almost completely secret agency. While it is a governmental agency, it will be allowed to conduct most of its activity free of a lot of close scrutiny by the public or by the press. That's because it will be put in Jobs Ohio, in the Department of Development. Jobs Ohio is a nonprofit corporation that was created 10 years ago and receives Liquor Control Commission money, the taxes imposed for the sales of alcohol in Ohio. And it's what's funded the new the Intel chip factory northeast of Columbus and a number of other economic development projects. So the cheerleaders are going, and incidentally, this bill that is in the biennial budget, buried, 10 pages buried in a 5,600 page budget document, the agency will have budgetary authority and the ability to rely on the Department of Development's issuance of bonds. So we're all going to be shoveling corporate welfare money at Oklo, which is a company that is slated to build 2 molten salt reactors here at Piketon. Molten salt reactors are a technology that has some dangers, but also has already been proven a long time ago and at considerable length to not work. As a small modular reactor type, molten salt reactor, there was a molten salt reactor built at Oak Ridge in the early 1960s. It operated for about 4 years. From what I have been able to discern, it shut itself down or had to be shut down literally 200 to 250 times in that 4-year period. It was, of course, experimental, and that's a learning process, and I'm not criticizing that so much as the fact that the problem with molten salt reactors is salt, anybody who drives in the winter, corrodes metal. And the problem is that the intense sodium content of the material that is used to cool the reactor kept eating the reactor up. And so it had to be shut down, new parts had to be formed, all kinds of problems were occurring. So after this terrible experiment, which incidentally was a reactor room approximately the size of this conference room, the reactor also was very polluting because it was corroding pipes and a lot of radioactive liquid was escaping into the environment. And I can tell you in June 2023 that the Department of Energy has not yet, they are letting contracts for the next phase of trying to remediate the site. So another possibility, now that we will have an Ohio Nuclear Development cheerleading authority that will be shoveling money at firms that want to try experimental reactors at Piketon, another possibility is that there could also be a reprocessing plant established at Piketon. DOE cheerleaders across the country have been talking about starting reprocessing again. Plutonium is something that is gleaned and separated out from the acid processes that are used to glean uranium fuel from spent fuel. Reprocessing is a really dirty and very dangerous type of approach to get new uranium to use for fuel. It creates a very large and mostly liquid waste stream that's very hard to control and contain. Again, a highly corrosive type of waste. If any of you are familiar with the Hanford, Washington DOE installation, which is deemed to be possibly the most dangerous nuclear waste storage site on the planet, that is something that could be reproduced in some degree here in Piketon and is a very distinct possibility. There is also a new line, a new product line at a plant facility at Piketon right now. Just in the last year and a half or so, the DOE has started to purify depleted uranium, DUF-4, it's depleted uranium. And the objective is to remove other kinds of isotopes, plutonium and uranium isotopes, that would otherwise contaminate it, because depleted uranium, as some of you probably know, is used to tip machine gun bullets, tank artillery shells, and other kinds of military weaponry, ordnance. It also is used to construct the internal structures of nuclear bombs. And it is probable that it will also be used in creating very heavy nose cones for dropped bombs. Much of the American arsenal of nuclear weapons is made up of what are called gravity bombs. That is in fact, that's the most prevalent nuclear weapon that is stored by the US at several bases in Europe. So that's going to happen here, and depleted uranium is going to be added to the contaminant mix also. So there have been a lot of efforts by some people to try to oppose this. As Pat mentioned, a number of us challenged the Department of Energy to assess publicly the nuclear weapons implications of having HALEU built here. Lee Blackburn and others have been attempting to get the Department of Energy to simply have public meetings, as they are required to under federal laws governing disclosures and citizen participation in DOE activities. But it's going to take a lot more. It's going to take people like you confronting the stuffed shirts who aren't here, and we have the empty chairs. We're talking about the senators and representatives and now, I guess, state officials, since we're going to have a secret nuclear development authority. But it's going to require a lot of outrage and outcry over what 70 years has brought and what the future is almost certain to add to. And remember, it's adding to a problem that is not dissipating. Your worst PCB contaminations will be destroyed by sunlight and the elements after a period of about 3 to 10 years, depending on the exposure, unless they're trapped in a riverbed where they won't decompose quickly. But your worst chemicals have nothing on the peaceful and the warrior atom. So a couple of questions occur to me in the wake of all this. One of them is that this story is repeating itself. It's going to repeat itself around every DOE installation in the country, I think, at some point between now and the next few decades. But why do people always, I mean, you have the cycle of sickness or death or worker health being compromised. and safety issues. And, all of a sudden, it seems, or over a period of years, it finally emerges that there's a problem at ports or another plant in Irwin, Tennessee. That there's cancer spikes, that there's a public health crisis, that people are having their lives and fortunes and possibilities all destroyed. So we're always demanding scientific verification, which we ain't getting from the federal government, that you have to get from citizen science, that you have to get from people who are spending a big chunk of their lives and time just trying to get the word out, trying to get the evidence and talk about the evidence and talk about what it should mean and whether there should be reparations and damages and stop doing this. But you're talking now about downwind vectors, 10 to 12, and who knows how many more miles downwind. It will ultimately be proven that there is measurable contamination. And DOE's response, as you saw in Dr. Ketter's presentation, their response is, oh, that wasn't us. That was global nuclear weapons tests, we think. We're not sure, but it wasn't us. I mean, that's the kind of response you're getting. And we're talking about thousands of acres of land that likely are contaminated within what DOE says is okay limits. And they've been telling a lot of their workers that you're not being poisoned. You're healthy. Your problems, I'm sorry, they don't relate to what's happening here at work. People are being systematically lied to for war or for profit or for whatever the reasons are, but they're being systematically lied to. And we are part of a natural system that is also facing those thousands of acres, as I mentioned earlier, of food producible land, of water, of soil, of trees, are also absorbing and holding and becoming storage devices for essentially human forever. And I have to wonder why it is that the companies and the governments don't have to justify up front that they aren't going to harm or destroy plants and animals and soil and water and people. And why it is that those questions only get asked after huge damage is done. One of the things that's happened in the 45 or so years that I've been actively opposing nuclear power is that a lot of science and a lot of medical science has shown that there is no safe exposure, there is no safe limit, that you're talking about ubiquitous ways that radiation gets around in the environment, from bird droppings, from rain at the wrong time when there is a cloud, a plume that's airborne, from so many causes. It's quite fascinating to realize that the same lies that I was hearing in the 70s and was being told you're nothing but a tree hugger because you're talking all this nuclear, radiation's forever and it's just the way it is. It causes me a lot of grief to think that this is going to continue unless we, in our myriad ways, in our collective ways, make it stop happening. It means, I know that Piketon means a lot of good paying jobs. I know that there are a lot of reasons to just do what's always happened here. But you can't. We can't. We need to stop making nuclear weapons. And what you are looking at is a Piketon that is pivoting into a nuclear weapons support system. This is not so much about commercial nuclear power anymore. We are talking about nuclear weapons proliferation, talking about the possibilities of trafficking, of theft, talking about a lot of environmental damage. We are at the center We are part of the systems that we're destroying, and it has to end soon. Thank you.